What if the fairy tale smile you've seen 1,000 times wasn't what it seemed? What if behind that carefully polished grin, the walls of royal palaces shook with shouting, tears, and slammed doors? For years, rumors swirled around Meghan Markle. Admirers called her modern, independent, and refreshing. Critics whispered that she was demanding, calculating, even cruel. But no one on the inside dared confirm it until now. But before we continue, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more updates. At 47, a former royal butler who served during the height of Meghan's royal journey has stepped forward, shattering the silence. His claims, explosive. His stories, enough to make Buckingham Palace staff nod knowingly and the public gasp in disbelief. Because according to him, Meghan lived a double life. Smiling warmly for cameras, but snapping with volcanic fury in private. And the people who paid the price weren't kings or queens, but the staff who served her every day. Curious already? You should be, because this butler's revelations confirm what many suspected, and it's worse than you think. The smile that fooled a nation. Every great story begins with contrast, and Meghan's was picture-perfect. The world first saw her as a dazzling Hollywood actress turned royal bride. She charmed audiences with compassion, eloquence, and style. The photos of her holding Harry's hand? Pure romance. Her speeches? Inspiring. But as the butler explains, that smile could switch off in an instant. According to him, Meghan knew how to win a room, how to dazzle the cameras. But the second the doors closed, her tone shifted. Staff whispered of icy stares, raised voices, and impossible demands. Staff would scatter when they heard her heels in the hallway, he said. One moment she'd be sweet as sugar. The next, she'd cut you down with a word. It sounds like a movie script, doesn't it? But this wasn't fiction. It was daily life inside the palace. And if you think this was just the usual tension of royal protocol, think again. Because this butler claims Meghan's temper was like nothing he'd seen before. Not even under Diana, Camilla, or Catherine. Why? Let's dig deeper. The private Meghan few ever saw. Behind closed doors, the butler says, Meghan ran the household like a film set. Every detail had to be perfect. Every flower arrangement, every meal, every conversation. And when things weren't, that's when the storm broke. She could smile to your face and then moments later, scream at the way a napkin was folded, he recalls. One chilling story he shared involved a junior maid who brought Meghan the wrong herbal tea. The butler remembers the sound of Meghan's voice echoing through the corridors. She was red in the face, furious over something so small, he said. The poor maid ran out crying. Meghan didn't follow. She simply sighed, as though she had made a point. Other staff described it as walking on eggshells. Every interaction carried the risk of sparking an outburst. But what made Meghan different, according to the butler, was not just her temper. It was the way she used it strategically. She knew when to turn it on and when to turn it off, he explained. In front of Harry, sometimes she softened it. But with staff, she rarely held back. And the psychological toll? Devastating. The tears of the staff. This is where the story takes a darker turn. The butler described staff members crying in bathrooms, breaking down after long shifts, or even quitting abruptly. Many had served royals for decades, weathering storms under Charles, Diana, or Camilla. But Meghan, they said, was different. She didn't just demand excellence. She demanded the impossible, the butler said. He remembered one footman, a man in his 50s, who had worked for the family since the days of the Queen Mother. After a particularly vicious scolding, the man told the butler, "I've never been spoken to like that in all my years. Not by a king, not by a queen. Never." And then he resigned. For the palace, losing seasoned staff was alarming. For the public, these cracks were invisible. Meghan still dazzled on red carpets and smiled in interviews. But behind the walls, the atmosphere was collapsing. The butler summed it up chillingly. Meghan didn't just break routines. She broke people. But why? What fueled these fiery outbursts? The psychology of power. Was Meghan's temper simply stress? A clash of cultures?
Come to fruition
Or
in that
something
way.
deeper?
Look,
The
it
butler
would be worth
believed it came
That
from
wasn't the
control.
original ending, though. What we
Meghan
ended
needed
with
to be in charge, he explained. She couldn't stand being told no. Every detail had to align with her vision. And when it didn't, she lashed out. This need for control, he argued, wasn't unusual for Hollywood. On a set, stars often dictate the tone. But in a royal palace, tradition ruled. Protocol was rigid. And that's where friction exploded. She saw herself as the star. But in the monarchy, the institution is the star, he said. This clash created a war behind the scenes. A war Meghan fought with her temper as her weapon. But here's the twist. Not everyone was a victim. Some staff, the butler admitted, admired Meghan's determination. They saw her as someone who refused to bow, who demanded respect in a system built on hierarchy. Even I sometimes thought, maybe she's just breaking the old ways, he confessed. So was Meghan a tyrant, or a rebel misunderstood? Harry in the middle. And then there was Harry. The butler described him as caught in a painful tug-of-war. He adored her. He wanted her to be happy. So he often took her side, even when staff were in tears, he said. Harry, according to the butler, tried to smooth things over. He'd apologize quietly to staff, sometimes with a sheepish smile, sometimes with a heartfelt word. But Meghan's temper often left him powerless. Once, after an argument, Harry found a maid crying. He patted her shoulder and said, "She doesn't mean it." But the maid replied, "It feels like she does." That, the butler said, was the tragedy. Harry wanted peace. Meghan wanted control. And the palace wanted order. Something had to break. The breaking point. So when did it all collapse? The butler points to the months leading up to Megxit. Staff morale was at rock bottom. Resignations piled up. Tensions between Meghan and senior royals boiled over. And Meghan's temper? Louder than ever. Her outbursts became more frequent, more explosive, he recalled. It was as though she was daring the palace to push back. And push back they did. Whisper campaigns began. Leaks to the press painted Meghan as a bully. The palace investigated complaints quietly. For Meghan, it was betrayal. For staff, it was justice. And for Harry, heartbreak, the butler's final word. Now, years later, the butler says he no longer works in the royal household. But at 47, he's ready to tell the truth. People deserve to know, he said. Behind the glamour was pain. Behind the smile was a temper that left scars on good people. His words confirm long-rumored suspicions. That Meghan's public image didn't match her private reality. That staff tears weren't rare, they were routine. But perhaps the biggest revelation is this: Meghan wasn't unique. Power has always tested royals. But the butler insists her reign inside the palace halls was unlike anything before. She wasn't just difficult. She was destructive, he concluded. The cliffhanger. What does this mean for the future? If Meghan truly lived this double life, what does it mean now? Could Harry and Meghan's Hollywood empire crack under the same temper? Could staff in California face the same fate? Or will Meghan learn to channel her fire differently, away from palace walls? The butler leaves those questions hanging, but one thing is certain. The fairy tale wasn't what it seemed. And once you see the cracks, you can never unsee them. The lesson behind the drama. So what's the takeaway from this butler's bombshell? That power reveals. That temper tests. And that behind even the brightest smile, shadows can hide. For Meghan's critics, this is validation. For her fans, it's a challenge. Can you love the public Meghan while acknowledging the private one? For the rest of us, it's a reminder. No fairy tale is flawless. And perhaps that's the real story. Call to action. What do you think? Was Meghan simply misunderstood, fighting a rigid system with fiery passion? Or was the butler right? Was she explosive, unpredictable, and cruel behind closed doors? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this article with friends who've debated Meghan's true nature. And don't forget, the truth is rarely simple, but it's always worth uncovering. The Whisper Network inside the palace. Have you ever worked in an office where whispers meant more than memos? where rumors spread faster than official announcements. Now imagine that office is Buckingham Palace, and the subject isn't a colleague. It's Meghan Markle. The butler paints a vivid picture of how Meghan's temper created an entire whisper network inside the royal household. It wasn't just gossip, he said. It was survival. Staff learned to warn each other. She's in a mood today, or don't bring that up right now. It became a code. This network wasn't malicious. It was a defense mechanism. If one housemaid had been shouted at, she would quietly tip off the next shift. If a secretary sensed tension brewing, they would send a discreet message to another department. But the most fascinating detail? According to the butler, even senior royals weren't immune to these whispers. There were times when Charles or Anne would overhear, and you could see it on their faces. Concern. Frustration. But never direct confrontation, not at first. And that's where the cracks in the monarchy began to widen. Because when whispers turn into accepted truths, it means the silence of the powerful has failed the powerless. But the butler